Members, please return to your seats. We'll start the meeting very soon. There will be 2 sessions of the meeting to deal with the items on the agenda. After this session, we will take a break for 10 minutes, and then the second session will start at 5:10 p.m. So, members, if you have a direct or indirect pecuniary interest in matters to be discussed, please, in accordance with ROP 83A, disclose the nature of that interest before you speak. So, members, also please pay attention to ROP 83 in relation to voting when you have a direct pecuniary interest. This is FCR 2017-82, and this is to ask the FC to approve a commitment of Hong Kong $6 billion for Hong Kong subscription to shares in the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIB, comprising Hong Kong $1.2 billion for paid-in shares and Hong Kong $4.8 billion for callable shares. The FSTB has consulted the FA panel on the 16th of March 2016, and the government, in response to members' requests, has submitted 4 information papers which have been circulated to members. I'd like to remind members that any questions raised at the MC have to be directly related to the content of the papers, and the members should refrain from repeating your own questions and points made by others for questions on wider policy issues that should be dealt with or raised at other policy panels. And we have the Mr. James Lau, Under Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury, and his team to answer members' questions. In the last meeting, Mr. Lang Kok-hong has moved a motion to adjourn the proceedings, and on the list to ask questions or to speak include Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Nathan Law. So you stopped me from speaking last time, but then I don't have a chance to speak again. Then you have all the say then. So would you be giving me my opportunity to ask questions again? Mr. Lang, would you like to continue to move a motion to adjourn this item? Well, if that is the case, please speak. You will be given 3 minutes. I originally intended to scold you, but, well, let's not talk about that. In the debate in the last meeting, it was a debate on principles. The administration has used typos to refuse our monitoring them. They have this typo, but unless you say that, well, we would let you go or let you off the hook, but you are even worse than your bosses. Where we asked you for information on officials' salaries when we monitor you, and you refused to give us the information, and then we made an estimate, a wrong estimate. Then you asked Andrew Leung to stop short of our speaking time. I'm not making things difficult for you. If that is allowed, then we don't have any rules to follow. The AAIB is something that will last for a very long time. Mr. Xi Jinping talked about the Belt and Road Initiative in 2012-13. It's now 2017. So you are trying to put up a fight against us. You can rule over my decision, but I can't monitor you or rule over what you said. We will have a riot. Say if the Barcelona is fighting against the Real Madrid, then if there is foul play, then that has to be ruled on. So we are not having an emotional debate here. You are the chairman, and you have to stick to the rules, and I will keep quiet. That's number 1. Number 2, Chairman, you said all the time that you have a slip of tongue, and then you would are willing to apologize. But no, that should not be the case. Your words carry weight. If you stammer and say something wrong, then you apologize, and that's fine. Well, I don't think that should be the case. But you should not be chairing meetings. You speak something that is expected of being a foul language. You can't willfully do evil things. So your ruling on me the other day was wrong. I looked up my language in the dictionary. You said that I have set a wrong example to Hong Kong's children. Christopher Chung did that. He used this wrong rendition of the Chinese phrases. And did anyone rule over him? Well, the word dickhead or the figurehead should not be used, you said. Well, please listen to what I said. Miss Claudia Mo. Miss Claudia Mo is not here. And Mr. Nathan Law, please. I support this motion to adjourn the proceedings. I protest against your exercise of discretionary power. It's been wrongly used. You've been siding with the government, and the members move a motion to stop certain things being proceeded with, and you do not allow that. This is obviously not a typo. A typo means you have mistyped certain things, certain words. But then, this time round, there is a mistake in the Chinese and English translation of the terms. So it's a mistake in the translation. It's not just merely a typo. And Chairman, obviously, you are now using your discretion to allow them to correct the document, but you haven't consulted the members present. There is no precedent on this as well. You are using your discretionary power. In effect, you are waiting for the 3 days notice required. Well, if it is corrected, then it should be deemed a new document. It should be treated as if it is a new document, and it should go through all the proper procedures, which should be given 3 days notice of the paper. And you should not just allow them to correct the documents on the spot. Now, earlier on, when we scrutinized the project on Disneyland, Mr. Eddie Zhu invoked 21, ROP 21, and he suggested that we approve the project with conditions. And I hope that you can do the same this time. You should use your discretion, again, to invoke ROP 21. Chairman, your balance is not right. You are always siding with the government, giving all the favors to the government. When the LegCo wants to invoke our own power to monitor the government, you are always defending the government. So the greatest problem with the LegCo is not that we have filibustering and abortion of meetings. It's just that we have a bunch of yes men. And Mr. Michael Ten was have guts last time. He dared to oppose the project or the item, approve it with conditions, but not many people act like that. If that is the case, there is no way that the LegCo can monitor you, because you are just like you support everything the government proposes. So, Chairman, towards the exercise of discretionary power, I would like to protest. I hope that you can ask the government to withdraw this paper to show that you, as a chairman, you are acting justly and fairly. You speak to the media all the time, and you are venting out your grievances here with them. Ms. Claudia Mo, we didn't have enough members here at the Democratic Party, and we have approved the $5.4 billion for the Disneyland project. And for this AIIB, we're talking about some of $6 billion. And you said that it's going to do good to our economy. Well, after having heard the government officials, we only get scared. We said that that's going to be a sub-office to be set up, and then we can vet the proposal. No, that's not the case. We don't have the vetting power. And then maybe we have certain say in the board of directors. No, we can't participate in the board of directors. So we have a 0.7% voting power. So I think this is just a bootlicking project. Again, it's another project of that kind. You said you have listed out all the benefits to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is an international financial center, and we originally have such advantages. So do you think people will give you special favors if you say we have this office here. Isn't Hong Kong part of China? That's what we've been saying all along. For other countries, say for example Australia, while Belt and Road Initiative should have nothing to do with them, but then the Australia joined later. They said that they are going to drive economic growth and create jobs so that more people can get a job, and they want to boost the economic growth. But for Hong Kong, I don't see any real meaning for us to join. Well, it's just it's just a friendly gesture. You said there's only $6 billion. You don't have to worry, and we are just only to pay $1.2 billion, and for the $4.8 billion, it will just be in the reserve, and it may not be necessarily needed. It's just contingent liability, and there is no need to set up a certain fund to provide for that. So you sounded as if this $4.8 billion doesn't have to be paid, and $1.2 billion is a small sum only, because we are talking about tens of billions of dollars for our projects all the time. So it sounded a small amount. But then for this $4.8 billion, you have to set it aside. You can't put it to any other use. So it means that you're still having a commitment of $6 billion. And you want to strive for a sub-office to be set up, but then you don't have any vetting power. And you just have 0.7% voting power. Is it worth it? Mr. Raymond Chan, I speak in support of Mr. Leung's motion to adjourn the proceedings. Why do we need this? And that is because on Tuesday, when we held the meeting, I pointed out that for this paper, there is a great discrepancy between the Chinese and English versions of the paper, and that is related to the phrases head and subheads. So Mr. Leung was referring to all these heads, and then you seem to be using foul language in stopping us from speaking. So the main crux of the matter relates to the head and subhead. So before we actually go into the debate proper, the government is obliged to explain further what they mean by head, subhead. What are they all about? How come that there is this mistake? Chairman, you just referred to a commitment of Hong Kong $6 billion for Hong Kong subscription to shares in the AIIB, and we're talking about 7,651 shares here. We see another thing here. LegCo, including chairman and the secretariat, have overlooked certain documents from the government. But for government's papers, you are looking at them meticulously. The Finance Committee has accepted the paper and is uploaded on the web on April. And I pointed out the mistake on the 2nd of May, and there's a long period in between. And you said that is just, pardonable that you and the secretariats have overlooked the mistake. But then it seems that the secretariat seems to be part and parcel of the government. And when it's the government document, we try to work speedily, and you have every trust in them. But towards the electoral members, you treat us as if we are thieves and we are standing your way in going through the procedure, and you use a microscope to look at our documents. So for a motion raised by member, if there is great discrepancy between the Chinese and English version, you would find that a big problem. I don't think that this is just merely a typo here. I think it's the concepts are confusing. So I don't know whether we should trust in the English version or the Chinese version of the paper. So the most correct way to do is to withdraw the papers. Of course, the government has admitted to its mistake, and it has given us this replacement page. And maybe members can speak on whether this is acceptable. So anyway, I speak in support of Mr. Leung Kwok Hong's motion to adjourn the proceedings. Dr. Kwok Ki, I also speak in support of Mr. Leung Kwok Hong's motion. And I think the chairman has made a mistake in handling this. The greatest controversy in the last meeting is that there was the wrong phrase in the head and the subhead in the papers. I think you should ask the government to withdraw the paper, and maybe in the next meeting it should be presented again. Of course, there is also the question about the notice, the waiver of the notice period. The government, the LegCo's duty is to monitor the government spending. And the rules of procedures serve one clear purpose, and that is we want the government to be very prudent in preparing the papers. And for these waiver of the notice period, it should not be given lightly. Chairman, you are acting outrageously every time. When the government makes extraordinary requests, you would accede to it without thinking. And conversely, if members invoke ROP 21 on certain or on imposing conditions for approval of the funding, say in the case of the Disneyland project, you didn't allow for us to do so. You give the public the impression that you've acted rather badly or poorly, and you are cutting the power of the LegCo, and it doesn't do any good to all the LegCo members, including the pro-establishment camp members. No matter whether you come from the democratic or pro-establishment camps, you have the duty to scrutinize the funding. We're not the MPC. We're not a rubber stamp. I don't want the pro-establishment members to doze off here in the meeting room. They're just voting machines and so on. This is $6 billion here. Well, let's not talk about allocating funding for the disadvantaged and the elderly people. Even the business sector, those SMEs, have been criticizing the government for not giving them enough support. And also for the continuing education fund, the funds are not really helpful to the people in Hong Kong. So if we have $6 billion to help the disadvantaged groups, those who are waiting for drugs, and also the SMEs and micro enterprises, which have not been given support by the government, they can benefit a lot from the $6 billion if this is given to them. So why are you forcing through the $6 billion for the AIIB? Mr. Eddie Chu. I support the motion to adjourn. There are two reasons. First, in terms of procedures, as what others colleagues have pointed out, this is not merely a typo. Well, if you put in fan yat instead of fan mok, then we would call that typo. But then if this is a head and you call it a subhead, then this is blatantly a mistake. And if you look at fan mok, you would not suspect that it's a head. You would just accept it. You have read the papers yourself, and you accepted the papers. So this is a very blatant mistake. So that we should remedy the situation or the mistake through the proper channels. This is giving due respect to the LegCo. And we must make sure that the administration go by the procedures in doing things. Secondly, I also oppose this item. The reason being, Mr. Houghton Chow said something last time, and he actually spoke about my reasons in the reverse way. He said that the U.S. has been very successful in the past few decades in making a presence in different parts of the world through this international bodies, and then they have got a lot of economic and political returns. And Beijing obviously now is doing the same thing. And the mainland wants to venture into the Belt and Road initiatives, and the AIIB serves as a tool for them. So, if we don't agree with the U.S. approach back then to venture into the different parts of the world, especially the smaller countries who should be subservient to the U.S. So similarly, we should not be agreeing to Beijing's approach. That's what they are doing in South China Sea. They occupy the islands and they are setting up military bases there. Hong Kong people say that we want to uphold the principle of one country, two systems. If we are really sincere in doing that, the first thing that we should do is that we should have a democratic election in Hong Kong. We should uphold the rule of law in Hong Kong. And we should not be, say, partnering with the mainland authorities and dream about this Belt and Road initiative dream. I totally disagree with your remarks about the South China Sea.
Chairman, what's the difference between the three terms 運動, sports, 行動 action, and also between 慶祝, between excited or 慶合合, agitated? Can the Chinese words be used interchangeably? Now we're talking about subhead, which is about the structure of the document. It's about the layers of the structures. Can I just change these terms at will? We've been told that this is a solemn occasion. We conduct our meetings very meticulously, and we do not allow the mistakes to slip through without attention. And I'm talking about Rule 57 of the RP. Whether I wonder if one can just let it get through like this. So I support Mr. Leung Kwok-hong's motion to adjourn the meeting. And secondly, I am opposed to the AIIB. It said that there will be a lot of business opportunities in joining the AIIB, otherwise will be marginalized. But we are not told anything about the planning and the and how AIIB works. I'll elaborate on this later. I support the motion to adjourn. I hope we can tell the people that this is a very solemn meeting, and it's not a question of whether one is not careful with the wording used. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, I want to make 2 points. I think, Chairman, you should not respond to members' speeches or comment on members' speeches. Otherwise, you lose your impartiality as chairman. Unless the member digresses, otherwise you should say that I agree or I disagree with you. You have a lot of opportunities to speak. If you keep on saying that you disagree with this, you disagree with that, you monopolize the entire meeting. I hope you will not do it again. Second, about this German motion. Well, I also do not subscribe to the idea of AIIB. As Ms. Claudia Mo has said, we will be paying $1.2 billion in the first instance. Well, you know that recently we have been approached for assistance by some patients of rare diseases. and the government ignores them. The government wants to develop the economy. Or would the Hong Kong economy collapse if AIB is not set up by China? Of course not. There will be other developments. And now you want to ride on this opportunity. It's certainly not something we must do. And also I refer to paragraph 3E. Now that the AIB has been set up by the government, and we should join this new bank, is a good demonstration of working of the one country, two systems principle. So are you trying to suggest that by allowing Hong Kong to join the AIB, it shows that we have the one country, two systems principle? Well, this is the meaning to the principle. It doesn't mean anything like that. We're talking about Hong Kong's political system and economic system are different from those on the mainland. And then within the same country, we have two systems. Our participation in AIIB doesn't go to show anything about the one country, two systems principle. It seems that our rule of law and our system are deteriorating. Whether the principle is upheld or not is not dependent on our joining AIB. Dr. Yu Chong Yim. Well, the Deputy Secretary admitted that there was a mistake, and you have now issued a replacement page. So you should take it back and then queue up again. That's as simple as that. You have admitted that it's a mistake. You should admit it and then take it back of your own accord and reissue another one. And now you force the chairman to go down with you, and now he had to speak something like foul language to defend you. Why do we have to spend time to try to put a stop to this item? Not that you don't admit it. It's just a question of a mistake, something different between the Chinese version and the English version. You can take it back and resubmit it. What's the impact for you? What's so difficult for you? Why do you want to ram it through? No one is allowed to make corrections on the spot other than you. And now the chairman was forced to say something that he didn't intend to. So you should take it back of your own accord. You have agreed that it was wrongly stated. It was a mistake to put it like that. It's just like a student making a mistake in your homework, in his homework, and then the teacher is so kind to point it out to you. You should take it back, redo it, and then submit it again. But you want to stand in front of the teacher and correct it on the spot, causing delays to all the students waiting behind you. Well, you should take it back, make the amendments, and then join the queue again to submit your homework. What's the point of asking the chairman to do so many undesirable things to help you? Take it back, amend it, and resubmit. It's as simple as that. There are no problems. Why do we have to spend the time of 2 meetings to handle this process? I don't understand why you are so insistent on getting it passed as it is. Well, like other members, I also have the same feeling about how you chair the meeting. or in the past you did not chair as many meetings. But in the way you, by the way you chaired the meeting, I think I thought we were in a meeting of MPC. With every time after a member has spoken, you don't agree, and you would like spend tens of seconds to respond, then we'll be in a very long process. I think you have lost your cool. I don't know whether it has to do with your double standard. Chairman, you have two choices. Well, you can admit that it's your fault, or you can resign. Your judgment is unsatisfactory. For example, the ruling on Mr. Leung Kwok-hong's use of foul language. I would put it to your as your unintentional mistake. Well, you use the most generous yardstick to judge the government's mistake, but for members' proposals or initiatives, you would use the strictest standard instead. And this time you have actually created a most undesirable precedent. This is not a typo. It's not an additional comma or use of the writing down the wrong character. It's not like that instead of one connective dig, the government has used G, another connective word. If you say that subhead in the Chinese version should read head, 總目, then you are creating a precedent and a lot of troubles would come in the future if this happens again, either due to government's action or members' mention. So how much money will be wasted by handing the meeting like this. So I hope you would take my advice, although it may not sound pleasant to your one's ear. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, I won't say anything. I'm referring to a historical genius. Well, if we have shortcomings, we are not afraid of criticism. As long as you're right, we will make amends. If you propose a way that is beneficial to our people, we'll do as you suggest. It's from Chairman Mao in an article on how to serve our people. I hope since so many of us are keen to learn more about China, you should read this article. Since we serve our people, so we are not afraid of criticism if we have shortcomings, whoever those critics might be. If you can justify the comments, we are willing to learn and make amends. And now I'll put this question to you, that is committee with Jen, the discussion on this FC item, FCR 2017-18 number 2. Do we need to sound the bell? Okay, let's sound the bell. Members, may I remind you that we are now going to vote on the motion to adjourn this particular item.
好，然後開始表決。
Let's proceed to vote. Voting stops and the result is now displayed. 51 present, 24, 30 against, no abstention. The motion is negative. Now let's return to the Q&A session. Ms. Claudia Mo, second round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I still want to ask this question. How the $6 billion is going to be spent. Let's assume, it's not an assumption. As Mr. Junius Ho has said that if we have a show of hands, we will certainly win. And also, by doing this, the $1.2 billion will be paid right away, and then the $4.8 billion will be earmarked and put in reserve. What is the period of call? Is there a chance that the $4.8 billion will not be called? If they do not make a call in 5 years, would the money still be handed over in 5 years' time? Under Secretary, well, the $4.8 billion will be for callable capital. It's a contingent liability for us. I know, contingent liability. You have said it a number of times. So is there a chance that the money will not be called? But this means that when the bank has a need for members to pay, we'll have to pay. That's the contingency liability. I know that. What if it makes really good money, good profit, and they make no call? Would this $4.8 billion still be handed over? Are we going to get it back in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? Is there really a call period? No. So the $4.8 billion will be gone. You said that we shouldn't be worried about this. It's just $1.2 billion. And we are going to sit on the remaining $4.8 billion. So my second question goes like this.
Now you said in Hong Kong there's an AIIB branch. Now actually we have no part in any approving. So this is a front. This is just a pseudo office. It's very expensive. But what is the branch here for? Chairman, we explained this in the last meeting. Now, this is not a branch, this is an office. And for this office, we hope that they will use Hong Kong as a treasury office for managing the funding and issue of debt. And this is a working office. And the Articles of Agreement make clear that all approvals. Now, don't repeat that. Now, the board is responsible for that. Now, it's not a branch, it's an office, okay. It's to get funding for the head office of AIIB. And it's not for projects in Hong Kong, right? So it's not for Hong Kong's benefit. It's for just to serve the head office, right? Is it just working on tasks from the head office, or is it that there are Hong Kong projects where it can help? What do you mean by Hong Kong project? Now, if we strive to get it, and if we get such a project, or is it that we just work for others, work for the benefits of others? Now, say a AIB project for France, and we just serve them. So we get financing. So maybe next round, please. 10-man hold, 5 minutes. Now, previously, I wasn't in the panel, so maybe the question was asked already, so if so, I apologize. Now, the document CB1763/02, now there are appendices, annexes A and B. Now, the first sentence is very simple. Now, the $6 billion, if we pay the $6 billion, will we become a member of the board? Now, Hong Kong, in that case, we will have a director. Now, there are 12 constituencies, and each constituency is represented by a board member. So we don't sit on the board of directors, right? So because China is there, so Hong Kong will not have a role, right? What do you mean? Now, you said that the constituency selects the director. So Hong Kong is not a constituency. So it's those that have more voting right, then they become directors, and that's different from the board of governors. Now, you have $6 billion, right? So you will not become a member of the board. So if you join the AIIB, then is it that you pay a small sum, so you join the board of governors? Now, other members who sit on the board of governors, how much do they pay? Now, $6 billion, is it just the minimum that Hong Kong has to pay to join the board of governors? Or is it that we pay much more than other members who sit on the board of governors? So let's say some other place pays $1 billion and sits on the board of governors. So we just pay $1 billion because we don't need the power to elect a director, right? The Undersecretary. Now, in our documents, there is an annex which shows the capital stock of all the other countries. Now, the calculation is not in relation to a minimum subscription, but it's based on our GDP. Now, we have 7,561 shares, and that's based on our GDP. And as for the board of directors, we may be able to sit in that meeting because they have deputy directors and they have consultants. So we might be represented as a consultant because that would require discussion. Now, can you tell us whether the discussion has been done, or you have to pay first before there can be discussion? Yes, we have to become a member first before we can discuss with the constituencies. So, in our constituency, what other countries are there? Now, we might join the China constituency. Of course, there are other constituencies. There are 8 others. Now, the China constituency, does it consist only of China and Hong Kong? It will be consisting of only China and Hong Kong. Next, Chen Chi-chun, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Now, I'd like to talk about the subscribed capital, that's 1.2 billion, and the callable capital, that's 4.8 billion. And and I asked whether you have to pay the 4.8 billion dollars, and the government says you have to pay before you can become a member. So 1.2 billion dollars is the subscribed capital and 4.8 billion callable capital. Now, is that by a formula? And the $6 billion commitment, would it be included in the 2016 to 17 budget? If it came earlier, it would be fortunate because we had $100 billion surplus. Now, the $4.8 billion of callable capital, is it just a promise? The government can make use of the $4.8 billion? Is it just a promise, verbal promise, or is it actual money set aside and that cannot be used for anything else? Now, when they want to use the $4.8 billion, we don't need to approve it, but do you have to come to LegCo for support? Now, the $6 billion is the commitment of capital that the AIIB requested of us, and they use a formula to calculate it for all the members. It's based on the purchasing power of GDP, the purchasing power parity, and the nominal GDP. They have a formula based on those, and the amount in Hong Kong dollars is $6 billion, or 7.5671 million US dollars. So 7 billion US dollars, 756.1 million US dollars. So it's as we explained, to our knowledge, up to now, no development bank has called the callable capital. Now, so this is a commitment. It is just in case that when the capital is called, then we would have to subscribe the actual amount. So it's just a promise. Do you have to lock up that amount in your treasury, so to speak? Ms. Chair, perhaps I can supplement. Now, according to the Public Finance Ordinance, if the government has to make a guarantee externally, the Finance Committee has to approve it. Now, the $4.8 billion does not have to be spent now, but we have to get the FC's approval. Now, in our reserves, we have sufficient resources to cope with that amount. You might say you can call it locking it up, but if we have to spend that money, it's available in the treasury. Now, the amount to be spent, would it be included in the 17 to 18 budget? Now, it depends on when the amount has to be paid. Now, it's not for the year in which the commitment is made. It depends on the year in which it is spent. Now, the $1.2 billion is actually paid in 5 parts over 5 years. So $240 million each year in our budget. So there's no there's no mechanism for it to be accountable to the FC, right? Now, if the AIIB tells us that the capital has to be paid up, then we have to. Now, previously, it's been asked whether we should make a report to the FC that we need to honor our commitment. Leung Yu Chung. If we become a member, then it would be helpful to the Hong Kong economy. We would not be marginalized and there would be commercial opportunities. I think that's rather abstract. Now, can you tell us what are the genuine or the tangible returns in terms of cash, for instance? Now, in the document, as I said earlier, you said that this is a realization of the one country, two systems principle. Now, I don't know how you understand the term of two systems. When we talked about the reunification, we talked about the political and social systems. Now, how do you distinguish the two systems? Now, in paragraph 3 of the report, we explain that Hong Kong, now many AIIB projects require financing, and the AIIB needs to finance for itself, and it has subscribed capital that amounts to $20 billion US dollars, and they can also borrow up to 2.5 times the capital if it's approved. So it has such capital management and financing mechanisms, and there may be future financing by AIIB and by the member countries. And because we are a regional financial center, we think that this will provide business opportunities for Hong Kong. Now, as for the returns for Hong Kong, now there are many engineering companies in Hong Kong, and they are experienced in the projects financed. So when we are talking about the mass transit or airport management, all these are business opportunities as well. Now, even if we are not members, we are still equipped to take advantage of the opportunities. Is it that if we don't become members, then we don't benefit from the opportunities? Now, many members try to avail themselves of these opportunities. They want the AIIB to set up offices in those countries to benefit from the financing projects and so on. Now, even for members, you just stand a slightly higher chance. You still have competition, right? And tangible returns, there's none, right? Of course, there's nothing guaranteed, but we have the status as a member. When we gain that status, it will certainly be helpful towards obtaining those returns. But it's not guaranteed. What if we don't get any returns? Now, even if we are not members, we still can avail of ourselves of the opportunities. It's just a smaller chance, right? So it's rather abstract. Now, I can use the example of Asian Development Bank as explained in the second footnote. For the ADB, now we have been consultants on ADB projects, and up to the end of 2015, we gained projects. We worked on projects of US dollars $961 million. Now, I can't guarantee that we gain a similar amount of benefit as in the case of ADB, but it can serve as a reference. Look, Chung Hong. Now, maybe you don't know, but ADB did consider using Hong Kong as its headquarters. Now, if they knew that this is if the current situation in Hong Kong, maybe they would have second thought. Now, Hong Kong, if we join the AIIB, we can build up our status as a financial center, and this would build up Hong Kong's edge or advantage. Now, other countries, they are not dumb. Now, most countries, with the exception of Japan and even European countries, they are all members of the ADB.
Hong Kong enjoys this particular advantage, and still we are dubious about this initiative, and I think it's inconceivable. And of course, Electrical has the right to ask questions, but I think we should have asked all the questions at the panel meeting. But still today, so many members are still asking questions, and we voted down on the motion to adjourn. But then I find it regrettable that members are behaving like this, and I have a specific question here. Chairman, in terms of the subscription of shares of the AIIB, it is based on the GDP's share in the world GDP. Some people think that if this AIIB is a good initiative, under the mechanism, can we subscribe more shares? Can that be allowed? In principle, members can ask to subscribe more shares. However, for the $100 billion capital of the AIIB, they have regional members and non-regional members. So there is no extra shares to be subscribed. So some members have been subscribing less than their share. They wanted later on to subscribe more, then that they're not allowed to do so. So there's no chance of doing that. Well, unless that there is capital replenishment, and then after negotiations, maybe members will be allowed to subscribe if there is a buffer, a great buffer. So can I follow up? The latest situation of the AIIB, it has been launched for quite some time already. So it is taking out loans for people to set up infrastructure projects. Have certain projects been approved? Are these other infrastructure projects going on in Asia? In our papers, there is this schedule which lists out the 12 projects amounting to some $2 billion. So apart from Asia, these projects are also in the Middle Asia. So these projects are going on. And these 12 projects are in the papers submitted to the FC, and in response to our members' questions, we have also given the same information. Mr. Nathan Law, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. In the government's document, I found this sentence very staggering. The Belt and Road Initiative has nothing to do with the funding application for AIIB. These two projects or these two initiatives are totally different. Of course, I know that. In terms of the AIIB, it covers not only projects in the Belt and Road regions. For these 12 projects, is there any one project being conducted in the Belt and Road country? Undersecretary, yes, some of them are in the Belt Road regions. I think all of them are taking place in the Belt and Road regions. Well, for the 12 projects, these are the approved ones, but there are some projects which are still being vetted. And to my understanding, they are not only in the Belt and Road regions. So my question then follows. So for the approved projects, 12 approved projects by the AIIB, these are all in the Belt and Road regions, and Belt and Road projects will take up a large share of AIIB projects in the future. So how come you say that this discussion has nothing to do with the Belt and Road discussion? I think the two initiatives are intertwined. In some literature, it is said that Belt and Road is very much part of the country's strategy, and the AIB is a tool to implement that initiative. So that has everything to do with whether we approve the $6 billion to join the AIIB, because the government has set out 5 reasons in past papers, and these 5 reasons are really not good enough reasons. And these set out the advantages of AIIB, but not advantages specifically for Hong Kong. And we should just hop on the bandwagon and try to get some benefits out of it. The Belt and Road Initiative means that there should be regional cooperation, and also if there is surplus productivity of China, then that can be used in this Belt and Road Initiative. And in fact, many international media are not very optimistic about the Belt and Road Initiative. So, for example, the Asian Wall Street Journal, there is an article saying that in relation to the Belt Road Initiative, China is just like a sinking ship. It's asking people to inject capital to try to bolster it up. And so these is the pessimism expressed by some on the Belt and Road Initiative. So can Hong Kong really benefit from the Belt and Road Initiative? Do you think this is an amount worth spending? Undersecretary, we have said many times, the AIIB is not there to implement the strategies for the Belt and Road Initiative. As to whether it is a sinking ship, we don't see that being the case. There are now 57 founding members, and there are some 20 new members who are applying, or new countries who are applying to join the AIIB in the next couple of months. So if these 20 applications are approved, then the total number of members in AIIB is 77 banks. And for ADB is 67 members. And just yesterday, the the ADB held an annual meeting, and the chief executive ADB said in his opening remarks that the AIIB was very important, and there are so many cooperation opportunities between the two, that is ADB and the AIIB. They can contribute a lot to the establishment of the economy and for infrastructure projects in the region. Mr. James Toh, I would like to follow up on my earlier question. The DB's views is this. If you are being honest to yourself, can I refer you to members to paragraph 3? This is a strategic initiative spearheaded by our country. This is very much a national policy. This is in financial infrastructure. And Hong Kong is an international financial center. It's just right that we should support this national policy so that we can build better relations and interactions with the country. So if you word it like this, then DP will support it. But then I find it strange. Well, the reasons you set out sound strange to me. Mr. Nathan Law and other members have asked you, what is the relationship between the AIIB and Belt and Road Initiative? You said that there is no relation. Obviously, they are related, not just at the first stage, but other stages as well. My understanding is that Beijing and the central authorities, when they mention about Belt and Road initiatives, they always talk about AIIB. So why is it that we say that these two are unrelated? Is it the case that the central authorities that we should take this line? And if you say that they are related, then there will be bad consequences, or what? And if Hong Kong finds that the two are related and we proceed with the joining of the member, then our people are worried about the undermining, say, of the one country, two systems principle. I find it very strange that you repeatedly said that these two initiatives are unrelated. Well, this is inconceivable. Can you respond to that? The AIIB, the Article of Agreement, well, there is no mention about Belt and Road Initiative in that agreement. Because the official document doesn't mention the Belt and Road Initiative. And also the first president of the AIIB, in response to a question earlier, he also said that the AIIB is not just serving the Belt and Road Initiative. Rather, their projects will also be in other countries other than the Belt and Road countries. Of course, I understand that. Beijing injects the most capital in the AIIB, and they should be very closely related to the Belt and Road Initiative championed by the country. How come that you say that the two are not related? Conversely, I'm worried whether there are some sort of secrets behind your remarks, so I get scared and worried. I'm sorry, I don't know whether we can finish the discussion on this item today, but I hope that the government can go back and consider this, because the way you put it will affect how DP views your stance and what is behind your thinking. I think this is key. So go back and consider. You may say possibly not related, or totally unrelated, or related. I mean, all these different remarks make a difference. Now, if you say that the two are related, then I will support you, because we have to, as a SAR, we have to support the country's policy. But then if you say that the two are unrelated, then it's like, putting the money down the drain. Well, the member said that the China has injected an unproportionally high amount. The share, the subscription of share, is based on the GDP. So when we talk about the two initiatives unrelated, we just meant that, and indeed, when we participated in our meetings and based on our observations, at that time we were not members yet, and many members supported the Articles of Agreement, but they didn't mention anything about the Belt and Road Initiative. There is no sort of hidden agenda behind. Ms. Tanya Chan, 5 minutes. Chairman, I would like to ask also, some members refer to the projects being approved. Well, actually, if members are very concerned about that, they can visit the website of AIIB, and I've been looking through these 12 projects. And some of the projects are high-risk projects. I understand that the AIIB helps some with launching infrastructure projects, and there is projects about a dam improvement project, a dam operational improvement and safety project phase 2, and there are some risk mitigation measures mentioned. It's said that the overall project risk is substantial. And then there is detailed analysis of the risks, which are very substantial risks or medium risk at least. So I'd like to understand that if Hong Kong becomes a member in terms of these projects, how can we wield influence on these projects? Hong Kong has a very minor share in the overall capital structure. So how much say do we have in approving such projects? I have looked at a few of these projects. And also there is this Indonesian project, Regional Infrastructure Development Fund project. Something interesting there as well. And I know that when these projects were approved, you weren't even the representative, but there are still more projects to be approved. So I would like to know what influence can you wield on these projects? Well, for this major project, it just has 60 pages in its description. So I would like to know how much influence will you have in the future? And for the SARG, we will be responsible for looking at these documents, and what is the influence? Well, we will participate in the constituency, and if, as a member of the governor, we can have a say. And if we have certain views, we can hand them to the board of directors, one of the directors, and then ask them to pass on our views, and we can ask questions through them as well. Now, we have a 0.7% voting power, but then China has 26% in its voting power. So in our constituency, if we want to ask a question, of course, I mean, the number of questions you ask will not depend on your voting power percentage. But anyway, the directors and the board can ask questions. So we can raise our concern at the board of directors. When the project's being approved, well, the members talked about 2 projects, and these are championed by the World Bank, these 2 projects. You talk about the risks and also the mitigations, measures, and so on. And they've been very transparent in highlighting the risk involved, whether it's medium risk or high risk, etc. And for many of the projects, they are launched in association with a number of international banks, say for the ADB as well. So they do face difficulties in running these projects, so they've been very transparent in highlighting the risk involved. I think it's a good thing that you have high transparency, and I think the SARG should learn from that as well. So, for example, you should tell us the risk of cost overrun, the risk of delay. So I think if you do that, I'll be very happy. At least we can ask you questions, further questions. And for many other projects, other development banks are being involved as well. Now, China is a major stakeholder in this. Do we know that we will share out the risk or what? The risk that can be shouldered by ADB may not be equal to the risk that can be borne by AIIB or that by China and Hong Kong. Do we have a certain common consensus on the risk that we can bear? Or should we be looking at the individual projects when it comes to risks? Under Secretary, I would like to clarify. Well, these we should not be talking about the risk to be borne by China or Hong Kong. It is a risk to be borne by the AIIB if we contribute to the shares, and then the AIIB staff will go through the due diligence process, and then they would work together with other development banks to assess the risks and so on, and they will ascertain whether the AIIB can bear such risk. So after the board of directors of AIIB has looked at the possible risk and also the urgency of the projects and seek the views from other development banks, and they will come to a decision. Sorry, the speaker's off mic. Ms. Chan, maybe you should press the button again. We have next Dr. Kwakaki. Chairman, the aim of the AIIB, the first is to through infrastructure projects enhance the sustainable development of the region and create wealth. And I think it's just that we contribute to the capital of it. But then there is a saying that our motherland is contributing a lot of capital. In 2009, 15 million people are earning less than $1.25 per day. There are some 480 million people who are earning less than 20 Hong Kong dollars per day. And 100 million people in China are poor people, and 70 million of them are in rural villages, and they earn less than $1 per day. Under Secretary, well, there is a great wealth gap in our country, and many people are living below the poverty line, and the SARG doesn't really care about Hong Kong people living under the poverty line. And we are now injecting capital into AIIB, which in turn will help other countries in Asia. But then if we have over 100 million people who are poor people, they don't have an education.
And still we support our country in giving money to other places. Do you think it's justified? Well, we're not participating in the discussion with China. Why not? When China, I think this is the State Council, consider this, they would not discuss the matter with us. They would not discuss with us as to whether they should contribute or how much. In Annex 1 of the paper, you can see a lot of developing countries involved. Yes, I've seen that there are an Indonesian, an Oman, and Bangladesh project. Their per capita income is similar to our rural people. We have 70 villages with no transport, 330,000 villages with no paved road, $100 million, among them 70 million in rural village are living in poverty. And now we are spending $1 trillion to give out, to give handouts to poor people. Of course, the corrupt officials are very rich, as our representative of the representative of Hong Kong, do you have the responsibility to remind the motherland that apart from giving out money, they should help our own people in poverty? They are not going to ask AIB to give them money. And there are 330,000 villages with no paved road. And now we are giving money to help other people to do infrastructure projects. Isn't it ridiculous? I don't think it's related to the document. Well, that's the first objective, sustainable development, and there's no sustainable development for China. Ms. Tanya Chan. I want to have a rational discussion about the risks involved and who in Hong Kong, which official in Hong Kong will be responsible for reading the relevant documents. If we don't have much of a say and we'll just do what China wants to do, and then after reading the documents, you would defer to China, and you say yes, I'll say yes. And it's just like the ADB or World. If ADB says yes and the World Bank says yes, we'll do it again. My concern is that who in the Hong Kong SAR government will be responsible for scrutinizing these projects? Is it FS? I would like to know more. Undersecretary, which department in the government will be responsible for the operation, or still to look into this further? Of course, the FS is a governor, and FSTB or another department may assist in overseeing the day-to-day operation. But in the main, this is the duty, the job of AIB's people. There will be more than 60 members. Will be reading the documents and scrutinizing the proposals in accordance with the urgency and relevance to Hong Kong. At this point, we don't have any dedicated people to do this. We're not a member yet. Well, I understand that we're not a member yet. That's why you need the $1.2 billion, and there are also callable injection. But you don't have an arrangement. You know, the FC structure, it seems you're that sure that this item will be approved. We need people. So you're saying that the FS will be there physically, but there's no need to read anything, so he's just there to vote. I would like to know which department and officers at which ranks will be there to make sure that Hong Kong would need more information apart from the information given in the documents, and also professionally we may wish to provide some input, and also whether it's good for Hong Kong economy, like you have suggested. For example, our status as a international financial center, and our people will get the contracts, such as procurement contracts, value as the certain amount. Are there government officials responsible for all these? When the $6 billion of capital is approved by the FC, we'll look at how operation is to be carried out. We'll look at the manpower of my bureau and relevant departments. And if necessary, we would come back to FC to secure approval for additional funding for manpower. Well, we read this document time and again. So you're almost sure that this is going to be passed, but still you don't know who in the government would be overseeing how the money is to be expended. Well, if we don't even know who in the government will be monitoring this, we might as well dump the money into the sea. What is the objectives of the AIIB, Undersecretary? Well, it's in Article 1.1 of the Articles of AIIB, Articles of Agreement. I'll read out the Chinese version, the original version is in English. The purpose of the bank shall be to foster sustainable economic development, create wealth, and improve infrastructure connectivity in Asia by investing in infrastructure and other productive sectors, and to promote regional cooperation and partnership in addressing development challenges by working in close collaboration with other multilateral and bilateral development institutions. And paragraph 2, there's no need to do it. We'll just pay you some money to set up an ASEAN office. There are 10 countries in ASEAN. So 1.2 plus $4.8 billion is like organizing a banquet, and you ask people to contribute towards the cost, which in these countries are international financial center. You ask them to give us face. What's wrong with you? Please tell us how many international financial centers we have here? London, New York, and then what? List them out. Please raise your question. I asked them to list out the financial centers. He's saying that if we don't contribute, they are not going to ask us to do anything. Well, we only have two representatives, China and Hong Kong. Our competitive edge lies not in giving out money. It's our unique position. Right? If you run a vacuum cleaning company, would you pay other people so that they will hire you to do vacuum cleaning? And how many shares do we have in the ADB, Asian Development Bank? What's our shareholding? Please tell us. ADB, not AIIB. Chairman, in the ADB, our shareholding is 0.054, and our voting right is 0.73% or 0.735%. Well, they act like conmen. They're asking us to do the injection. There are benefits for us. The Bureau must substantiate the claims of benefits. According to a U.S. think tank, citing an estimation of Chinese officials that the investment by China, i.e. by AIIB, 30% of them will be total failures. In Myanmar and Pakistan, 80% of the projections will be failures. So that's a very bad projection. There are 12 projects undertaken by the AIIB. What is the estimated return? So can you tell us that you are sure that there will be a return and it's not going to be a total waste? Well, there are projections. I have never seen such projections myself. For AIIB projects, when they do the risk assessment, when the board of directors assess these projects in these countries, they would take into account the need for economic development and risks associated with individual projects. They find the assessment results acceptable. Have they assessed the rate of return? I don't think they have, because they're talking about highway projects, dam projects, or power supply projects. Since they're not just looking at the rate of return, and it's not the basis to offer a loan, but the AIB together with ADB and World Bank, they would assess the development needs. So no data is not scientific. We all believe that these infrastructure projects would be good for the recipient country. So we believe a certain philosophy or a certain ideology. It's difficult to convince us to invest $6 billion in more risky countries. There are countries with major conflicts, political conflicts, and there are wars as well. According to the Bureau, in the AIB there is risk management. Can you please elaborate that in respect of major political conflicts or disastrous conflicts, is there going to be any mechanism whereby you can report back to this council on the risk findings? Well, the risk assessment is already in the relevant project document. It's in the website. We have set out the relevant link. You can access the link to find the findings. Only 2 members are on the queue. In the queue. That if any members who would like to ask questions, please join us now. I don't want to be accused of not letting members asking questions once we have finished with the questions. Well, I have never seen such a ridiculous proposition. We don't have money to help needy patients who cannot afford medicines. We have homeless people. We have elderly people waiting for places in RCHEs, and many pass away while waiting. And now we have 100 million people in poverty in China, and still we spend money in helping other countries in infrastructure projects. Well, I would agree that if the money is to be spent on alleviating poverty on the mainland, it's one of the things that the AIIB is supposed to do. For example, improving infrastructure to facilitate sustainable development. Undersecretary, you're on that delegation. Do you know that 330,000 villages on the mainland have no paved road? Would you suggest to AIB that the cement should be provided for the road to be paved? And also there are hundreds of thousands of rural people who do not have clean drinking water. Are you going to suggest to AIB on ways and means to help them? And if not, why not? Well, this is a question of decision making of the mainland. Well, if they're crazy and they don't help their own people, would you just keep your mouth shut? Among AIB members, there are members in various stages of development, and they are faced with different problems, transport, infrastructure, and so on. But they have joined the AIB because they think that this will facilitate their social and economic development. And even if you look at the 10 latest projects, most of these countries will be receiving money. And quite frankly, you should presume that the loan can never be repaid, and there's no return. So the money is going to be spent, and that's it. if this is about buying political capital through funding on the part of China. But Hong Kong doesn't need to do this. $6 billion is not a small sum. It would serve a better purpose if you use the money to alleviate poverty on the mainland. And this is meaningless. You don't get any return, any meaningful return. How ridiculous. Mr. Germany Tam is in the document, and that is, let me turn to the page. There was an investment for Sha Tin, and you took a loan. We took a loan from the Asian Development Bank. My question is, after we have invested the $6 billion in AIB, can there be any project? Would there be any project in Hong Kong that would enable us to borrow from the AIB? I think the member was referring to a project funded by a loan from ADB. Let me check. We have explained in the document that in the past there was a desalination plant in Sha Tin, and there's also a public housing estate development in Sha Tin. We took a loan, and it's been fully repaid. So the ADB invested. We invested in the ADB, and we took a loan as well. So my question is, coming 5, 10, or 20 years, do you foresee that in Hong Kong we might need to borrow money from AIB for some major infrastructure or development of new towns, just like what we did back then? Given the economic development of Hong Kong, the per capita GDP, and so on and so forth, normally we will not need to get a loan from AIB. Just like that we would not be asking ADB to extend a loan to us. We are not a borrowing member. Should there be a need to have a loan? What's the interest like? If Hong Kong, should Hong Kong need to ask AIB to offer a loan for our projects, we can submit an application, we submit a document to set out our requests for the consideration of the board of directors. But given our state of economic development, well, I have given you a minute. You haven't answered my question. What's the interest rate like?
Will it be determined when the time comes, or is it going to be more advantageous than what we can obtain elsewhere? Now, it depends on the actual project. Now, I don't see us borrowing $6 billion. I don't see us being a member enjoying a lower interest rate. Perhaps you can answer this next time. Of the loans that were made, can you tell us what were the interest rates? And say we don't borrow from them, like for the third runway, which requires financing. If we become a member, perhaps the airport authority can borrow from them. Shu Ka-chun. Now, for technical reason and for an ideological reason, I would be against this subscription. The technical reason is that the investment is going to fail. Now, Mr. Lau, the Undersecretary, admitted that there may not be a return. Is it just for the sake of participating in management of the AIIB, or is it for the AIIB to set up an office for financing in Hong Kong? I don't see how this would benefit the grassroots in Hong Kong. And there's an ideological reason that's more important. I think the government and the LegCo, we should be proponents of good ideas. Now, we shouldn't just foster all kinds of competition. Now, there's a magazine, this magazine, the topic for the issue is "Let Me Breathe." The young people, they live in an atmosphere where whereby they are under pressure to commit suicide. Now, China wants to form the AIIB. We all know it wants to become a global power in place of the U.S. and it wants to put up money to gain favor with the Southern Asian countries. Now, it has been proven in the past that there has been intervention by the advanced capitalist countries in the poorer countries. Now, the $6 billion of capital, and there's the One Belt, One Road policy, so apparently it would create huge business opportunities, but actually they just benefit the transnationals. They produce unreliable economic figures. Up to now, neither the government nor the economists have been able to convince the people or to convince the LegCo that these opportunities can benefit the people in Hong Kong and in China. Now, in the worst case, this kind of supranational financial institution might even foster financial tsunamis. Now, Hong Kong can be hurt by these financial crises that might be fostered as a result, and we should review our investment or commitment to this kind of international venture. Now, I will vote against this for our values and for our ideology in Hong Kong. Chen Chi-chun. Now, paragraph 3 of the document identifies 5 reasons for Hong Kong to join the AIIB. Kun Chung said that these are not proper reasons. It says that so long as AIIB exists, we will have those benefits. Now, I will ask short questions. Now, firstly, it says that the Hong Kong financial markets have certain advantages and they will benefit from the AIIB. So whether you are a member or not of the AIIB, it doesn't make any difference, right, the Undersecretary? The difference is not big. Now, this question was asked. If we are not a member, of course, we can hope that they would come to us for financing and issue of debt and so on. Now, there are many members which are also trying to get this kind of business from AIIB. Now, if we are not members, we can also go and compete, but I think the rate of success would be quite different. B, now we have experts in project negotiation, preparation of works and management contracts and so on. Now, again, if we are not an AIB member, we still stand a chance. Now, in your footnote 2, you mentioned the ADB. Now, we are a member of ADB. Now, even if we are not an ADB member, we can still try to get the contract, right? I think being a member did increase our chance. C, help reinforce our position as an international financial center. Of course, that's a very worn out material. Now, D, now Hong Kong's membership and contribution to the AIB's capital will underline our commitment to the bank, which will strengthen Hong Kong's standing and credibility. I don't understand that. Now, we are not a member right now. So we said that among international organizations, the ADB is a case where a non-sovereign entity can become a member by itself, and so there are only a small number of such cases. Have you asked those organizations and they've shut you out? Did they state that in their constitutions? Say for World Bank, it must be a sovereign government that can be a member. So in many of these multilateral development banks, they require sovereign members. So that's why we said there are very few of these organizations where non-sovereign members can participate. But I don't see the relationship to one country, two systems. This section is over. Please come back in 10 minutes.